There's all sorts of marriage advice out there, and we've all heard the saying, happy wife, happy life. Sounds good to me, but not everyone agrees. Relationship coach GS Youngblood joins us now to break it down. Okay, GS, what qualifies you as an expert on this happy wife, happy life concept?
Well, I've been there and back, Aubrey. I've been through a 10-year marriage that did not work out, and other long-term relationships, and that and all the men's work I've done over the last 10 years really codified into the book I just published at the end of last year called The Masculine in a Relationship, which really points out some of these patterns between men and women that emerge that really create a lot of relationship issues. The book is being very well received, and it's really an exciting thing to have come out.
Okay, so you do have real world experience. I needed to know that for sure. We often hear men, they swear by that phrase, well, happy wife, happy life. But you're saying that's not necessarily true.
It's not. And, the happy wife, happy life is a bit of a misnomer. On the surface, it actually sounds very generous. I want my partner to be happy. But underneath, in a lot of these cases, the men are actually scared. They're scared to assert themselves. And they're really actually scared of disagreement from their female partner, her disappointment and conflict between the two of them. And so these men, they just take the path of least resistance and give her what he thinks she wants. And here's the problem.
Okay, so you say
for her,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, and here's the problem. For her, at first, that feels good. She's thinking, this man is very easy to be with. This is very easy to be together. At some point, she starts to think to herself, like, where are you? Where are your opinions? What do you stand for? What do you believe in? What are your boundaries, quite frankly? And at some point, she starts to feel like she's having to handle all the thinking in the relationship. And really, inevitably, that leads to resentment. And resentment that builds up over a long time in a relationship is very hard to clear. So while happy wife, happy life sounds good on the surface and sounds light and humorous, underneath, there's actually some dark pain within the men that they're not really willing to confront.
Okay. I'm starting to see where you're coming from. You say that going along with your wife, your girlfriend's preferences in every area, when we're talking about where to go for dinner, household finances, and raising the kids, it's not necessarily going to keep things peaceful or hot. What else isn't working with that approach?
What else is not working with that approach? The problem that's happening here is there's this loss of what's called polarity in some relationships, where you've got one person at any given time asserting themselves, the other person really able to relax into that lead. And the problem today with many women today who are out in the workforce, they're out doing many things all day long, getting things done, earning money, coming home, taking care of the household. She just starts to feel like, wow, do I have to do everything here? And then that, we talked about the resentment that comes up before. And so in relationship, what you find is a lot of these women say they actually feel alone. They feel alone in relationship, and that's a really bad state for the relationship.
Yeah, that isolation. So let's talk about ways maybe to fix this potential problem. You believe the first step for a man to remedy this situation is to tap into his own desire. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, this is one of the things that I work with my clients on a lot. It is really getting back in touch with what are your preferences, what are your needs, what are your opinions, and in particular, what are your boundaries? And so I take the men through these exercises to really reconnect with that part of them that has their own volition, has their own opinions. And then what I talk to them about is really bringing that to the relationship. And so in the book, I call it provide structure. And so what provide structure can mean is bringing clarity and decisiveness. So this is not to suggest that a man would start to try to make all the decisions in the relationship, but what he can do is actually start to simplify some of those decisions. And let me give you an example. Instead of saying, hey, babe, where do you want to go on vacation this year? What I coach the men to do is go and actually research 3 places that you'd want to go on vacation. Research what the availability is, what the costs are, and what the options for entertainment there are, and then bring those to the table to her and say, hey, babe, I looked at these 3 places. Would any of these 3 work for you? And at that point, she can either relax into the sort of his simplification and choose one of the 3, or she might say, I don't like any of those. But he's simplified things for her. And so by bringing some of his own opinions, some of his own proactivity to the relationship, he can start to provide the structure that I talked about. So that's one example of a way that a man can do that.
Right. You attack a lot of these situations in your book, and you also talk about something about the man. He may have the best intentions, he's a very caring guy, but he can still find himself stuck in a flat relationship.
Hmm.
What is that flat
Yes.
relationship?
Well, when a man really starts to chronically abdicate, and that's what we're talking about here, where he chronically abdicates. And I'll give an example of a man I saw at a volleyball tournament last spring, and I said, "Hey, where's your wife?" Because I knew who she was, and he says, "I don't know. I just tend to hang back and let her tell me what to do." And that was a man that is chronically abdicating uh, any kind of volition, any kind of proactivity, any kind of direction setting on his part. And my experience with almost all of the feminine partners that I've talked to, really they uniformly say, yeah, I'm not inspired by this man anymore. I'm losing respect. It's not fun to be around. And so that's where the relationship starts to fizzle a little bit, when he completely and chronically sort of abdicates his own opinions and his own direction setting.
Yeah, and that's what we don't want. You got to keep finding new ways to connect. I think you brought up some really good points. We may have to talk about this a little bit more next time. We've run out of time for now, but I want to thank you for joining us. And if you want more relationship advice, you can visit gsyoungblood.com.